there's always one side that typically is going to have a little more leverage than the other. So you're going to put these clauses on your offer, and the most common clauses that you're going to see to protect you, or they find themselves in hot water because they maybe didn't have an opportunity to do all their homework. We see it happen to a ton of would-be home buyers. They learn absolutely nothing about the process. And then when the time actually comes, they're in the thick of making an offer. They have no idea what's going on. They have no idea what the roadmap is to be successful. And they learn things as they go, just stumbling along. And what a great opportunity to make a massive, massive mistake. Well, that doesn't have to be you. You're on day 5 of our home buyers course, our adventure together to help set you up for success, to make sure that you know how to buy a home in British Columbia the right way. Now, we have covered so much in the previous days, and sadly enough, this is the last day, but we're going to have a lot of fun today because I want to go through the actual offer process, getting the offer accepted, what happens when you get the offer accepted, what to expect. Let's talk about actually committing to the property. What happens with deposit monies? Let's talk about home inspections and what you should do with them. And let's talk about actually finally getting into the property. So if you're new to this, if this is the first time you're catching one of these videos, you're gonna wanna check below because we will link back to all the previous days, and it's probably best to go through them in order to make sure that you get the information in the right order so it can help you make better decisions as you go through the process. So with all that being said, let's get into where we are to date in the entire process. And this is really the offer process. You are now putting in an offer on the property. Now, you might be wondering about all the wonderful negotiation strategies that might be out there and available to a home buyer. And there's a ton. I mean, there's lots of ways to do things, but really when it comes to negotiating, there's always one side that typically is going to have a little more leverage than the other. Now, you being a home buyer, you can imagine that you always kind of inherently have a little bit of less leverage than the home seller. Why is that, you might be asking? Well, the simple reason is you chose them. You've actually picked their home. You've already kind of put up your hand and said, your home is the one I choose out of all the other properties that are available out there. I like yours. You don't have to buy theirs, right? So there's always a little bit of leverage in the seller's back pocket. Now, with that being said, you could find a seller who's in a must-sell situation. Maybe there's financial challenges, maybe there's family changes, maybe there's job changes, and they just need to get rid of that property. So you're going to want to talk to your real estate professional about what sort of leverage that you can create, whether it's within terms of your offer, the price of your offer, anything like that, to really get the absolute best offer out that you can. Now, one of the greatest leverage points that I actually think is available for a home buyer to get an amazing price on a property is using time to show the seller that you have really no need to move forward with the property. You're not in a rush to make decisions. That all sounds good. And in a perfect world, you could employ using time each and every time. And we've used this successfully to help our clients save thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on properties. But there's a balance to that, right? Similar to what I said earlier, you've inherently chosen this seller's property. This is the property you want to buy. You've looked at all the other ones that are out there, and this is the one that you want. So you got to be careful with using time in the same breath, right? You could wait all day long. You could wait a week. You could wait a month for that seller to actually accept your price. But the concern is, and your challenge is that you're not the only one looking to buy a property. And we talked about that in one of the previous days, where there's other people who are spending similar amounts of money to what you're spending, and they're looking at the exact same properties that you're looking at. So if you found what you consider to be the best property out there for your particular budget, other buyers are making those decisions as well. And it might not happen today, but you do need to be prepared when using time as a leverage point in negotiation, that you've got to be ready that somebody else could come along and they could pick up that property, and now you don't have one, right? You're back to the drawing board. You're back to looking for a new one. So there's tons of negotiation strategies out there. This is not what this course is about, but I just want to give you that little point of how to create some leverage if it makes sense for your situation. Sometimes you want to jump on the house right away because it's so perfect, you don't want to lose it, and that's okay too. It's really about getting the home that you want at the end of the day. That really is the most important thing. So you're going back and forth with this seller, and ideally you get an offer accepted. Well, what does that mean? That means that the seller has agreed to the terms and conditions of your offer, and you guys now have an agreement. Oftentimes, we've talked about due diligence in the past. You've got clauses and terms on this offer that you've written with the seller that says, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I don't know everything I need to know about your property. So I've put some clauses on here to protect myself. I want to have the opportunity to do other pieces of homework other than just discussing price and dates with you. I need to do some other stuff because if you did full blown homework on everything before you actually even went out and looked at the property, you would never get out of the office. You never get anywhere. So you're going to put these clauses on your offer. And the most common clauses that you're going to see to protect you is you're going to put on there subject to getting an inspection likely, subject to sending the deal to the bank to confirm the financing is 100%. You're going to want to review maybe something called a property disclosure statement. This is something that the seller fills out asking a bunch of questions, or answering rather a bunch of questions about the property. You're going to want to research the title of the property and make sure you're actually doing the deal with the right people, and also there's nothing on or attached to is maybe a better way of saying it, on the title of that property or the rights to that property that's going to affect your use or enjoyment of it. And one of the other big ones is insurance. We're going to talk about a little bit about that in a moment, but you're going to want to make sure that you understand your insurance obligations and what that might cost you. And of course, if you're buying a strata property, and we're not going to get into strata properties in this video, but there is lots of other homework that you do want to consider doing. So we're going to put up other videos about stratas, whether it's on our YouTube channel or on a different course if you're watching this through one of our courses. But you're definitely going to want to understand what's going on with the strata as well. So you've made your offer, you've got these terms and conditions on it, and now that's what we consider to be an accepted offer. This property is yours, and unless there is a term or a condition allowing the seller to, entertain other offers, it's yours and it's yours to lose. Meaning, you have a certain amount of time, usually 7 days to 14 days, to fulfill all of your conditions or do all of your homework, and then the property belongs to you. You're going to fully commit to the property at that point. When I say fully commit to the property, that's important because when you write an offer, you're not fully committed to the property yet. When that offer gets accepted, you're not fully committed to the property yet. You are committed to that property when you remove those conditions, those due diligence clauses, and actually put down a deposit. So, oftentimes in British Columbia, there is no deposit that is put down upon an accepted offer. Now, this isn't all the time, but it's most of the time. So you haven't transferred any money to anybody at this point getting an accepted offer. You just said, if all this checks out, I will buy your home for this price. So that's the accepted offer. Pending all of those conditions check out, you're going to almost do what is like a secondary contract, which we call a condition removal or subject removal, saying, here's all the homework that I said I was going to do. It all checks out. Or, maybe you've had conversations with the seller about, slight renegotiations because you found issues that are remediable or fixable. So you've removed conditions on this kind of secondary contract, and that's when you've actually committed 100% to this property. That's oftentimes when your deposit or your good faith money will now go down as part of the total purchase price. And that usually is held by your realtor's real estate brokerage. It doesn't go directly to the seller. That's most often how it works. So the documents that are involved when you make an offer on a property, you've got the contract of purchase and sale. That's where you're talking about price, you're talking about dates, you're talking about terms and conditions, deposit money, all that sort of stuff. We're talking about the property disclosure statement. So this is a document and it changes all the time. But there's various questions that we're going to ask the seller as real estate professionals that we want to know the answers to. Now, oftentimes with this document, it's very thorough and it asks a ton of questions, a ton of important questions. It's really important to go through it in detail. But one of the challenges with this document as well is it's to the best of the seller's knowledge. Okay, so what that means is there could be an issue happening on a property or within a house that is a big problem. And the seller is just simply unaware of it. So they're making representations to you on this document, but they might not have any idea. So, bad example, it's the middle of August, the roof absolutely leaks like a sieve. It's ready to just cave in. And they tell you that they've got no problems with water ingress coming through the roof because it's the middle of summer and they haven't experienced any of these leaks yet. You buy it and the fall rains come and this roof is just leaking like crazy. Well, the seller answered that question to the best of their knowledge. If they weren't aware of it leaking prior to that, then they really didn't do anything wrong. So this is just going on to say that you still really need to do your own due diligence. You don't want to rely strictly on what the seller is telling you. You still need to do your own homework. And that lends into our next example of a clause, which is a home inspection. So there is all sorts of home inspectors out there. I'm a big proponent in that you get what you pay for. And if I was spending money, I live in the lower mainland of BC, where houses in my community are easily starting at $1.5 million. If I'm buying a home for $1.5 million, I want the absolute best person qualified to inspect that home for me. And that's no different with a townhome or a condominium, whatever that might be. So you're going to want to research that home inspector ever so thoroughly. Check their online reviews, get recommendations from your real estate professional. Make sure that they are one of the best choices that you can employ to help you understand what's going on with your home. And they're going to check it all out. They're going to look at the entire exterior of the home. They're going to look at the yard of the home if it's a detached home. They want to look at the siding and the windows and the roof and the gutters. They're going to go inside the home and they're going to check all the major things going on in there, like all the electrical systems, the appliances. They're going to check all the plumbing fixtures, all the plumbing services. They're going to look for things that are imperfections, things that look out of place. They're going to be checking for moisture and damage and infestation. The list is broad with what a home inspector will do, and it is well worth the investment to get one when you're buying a resale property. Now, oftentimes people will ask us, do I need to get a home inspection every time? And the answer, of course, is no, right? You can make that decision if you want or do not want a home inspection, but you do need to be prepared for the risks associated with not getting one. There might be certain instances where you choose not to get one. Maybe you're buying a new property or a newer property that is still under warranty, as an example. That might be an example of that. But you just have to be prepared that you're going in blind, right? You really don't know. So, in lieu of all the considerations, maybe you just decide to do one and spend the money. Peace of mind, sleeping soundly at night, to have a professional go in and actually look at a property is probably a lot better than not having that at all. So, just a consideration. The title of the property is one of the other conditions that we're going to look at. That's more for your real estate professional to help you with. But if you're buying like a detached property or land, anything with land, anything like that, you're going to want to understand your rights and responsibilities with that land, and that's all contained on the title. You might also consider going to the city to get a survey of that land so you know exactly where your borders are of that particular property and there's nothing going on with like encroachments or anything like that. And while you're at the city, you're going to want to inquire about, was there any permits taken out? Your inspector is going to be checking the home, but oftentimes if you're buying an older property, lots has been done over the years. Someone's added an outlet somewhere, or someone's done something with light fixtures or renovated or done something. You want to understand what's been done with or without a permit, because that's going to lend us into our next conversation about conditions, and that's insurance. So, when you're getting insurance, your job is to report that property as accurately as possible to your insurance company. So, not only can they give you a quote on what they expect your monthly carrying costs are for insurance, but you know that your investment is actually going to be properly protected. Furthermore, you might want to try to not just get a quote, but you might work to get a policy that they can't back out of. In the world of climate change and natural disasters happening, you never know if a forest fire is going to break out near your home. We live in the lower mainland. There's forests everywhere. We don't know what's going to happen with flooding oftentimes. So you want to see if these policies that they're offering you are policies that can be put in place and they don't have the ability to retract. So it's a really good question to have with your insurance company. Okay. So those are kind of the big five conditions. The strata condition is the other one, again, for another video. We're not going to go too much into that. So when it comes to the documentation that you're actually going to be reviewing, oftentimes it's going to be the offer, it's going to be that property disclosure statement, it's going to be the title and any charges on the title of the property. That's kind of really where the meat is in those charges on the title. We're going to be talking about condition removals when we satisfy all of our due diligence clauses. You've already seen your disclosure of trading services from your realtor because they're a good realtor and they've showed you that to you well in advance. But this is the time as well where your realtor is actually going to discuss how they're getting compensated. They're not only going to let you know who is compensating them, but they're going to let you know what that estimated amount actually is. And that's done on something called the disclosure of remuneration of trading services. So that's your understanding of where the money's coming from and how they're actually getting paid. So that's something that's going to come along with that. And since you've had discussions, on previous days, we've talked about how a realtor gets paid and having those conversations in advance, you're going to be well prepared for that. And there's likely going to be no surprises in that regard. And one of the last documents that you're going to want to review is the MLS and data sheet and tax sheet. You're going to want to understand tax obligations. You're going to want to review that MLS data sheet in depth because you want to understand all the things that are being represented about the home. And ideally, you might consider checking them as well. So a really easy example of that is the square footage of the property that you're looking at buying. Well, how accurate is that? And if that's really important to you, do you want to go and have that professionally measured yourself while you're in your due diligence phase, right? So that's something that you can certainly decide to do. So those are the documents, those are the conditions. Now, one thing that we did touch on in previous days was what was called the home buyer's rescission period. This was really built for a time where the market was really quite busy or when buyers find themselves getting into multiple offers. And we have lots of resources on multiple offers and ways to win multiple offers in today's download. You can find that in the description of this video. But the home buyer's rescission period, that was added to slow down the process a little bit. So effectively what it is when a buyer writes an offer, you can still have conditions on that offer, but the buyer can write an offer and they can actually rescind their offer within 3 business days. So not 3 days, but 3 business days of getting that offer accepted. And that's meant to give them almost a sober second thought in terms of, maybe committing to a home, partially anyways, if they've got that accepted offer, if there's conditions on it, but to slow them down from fully committing to that home before they find themselves in hot water because they maybe didn't have an opportunity to do all their homework on it or have the conversations with people that they need. Now, there is a penalty to enacting that rescission period, okay, or enacting that rescission rather, and that is 1/4% as of the day of filming this. It's 1/4% of the agreed to purchase price. So there's a penalty, right? $1 million, 1/4% of that is $2,500 that would be due to the seller if you were a buyer and you decide to rescind your offer. Now, do not mix that up with not moving forward through a property or with a property based on something not checking out from your conditions. That's something very different. And I find that oftentimes professionals in the industry get that a little bit confused. But the truth of it is if you have a condition on there, let's say it was conditional upon your home inspection and something gets discovered in a home inspection and you decide, what, the seller doesn't look like they're willing to deal with it. I don't want to deal with it. It's going to be expensive. I don't want to move forward with this. And you pull your offer out in the first 3 business days. That's not necessarily a rescission. That's you not moving forward due to one of your conditions. So that is really the differentiator. But imagine you wrote an offer with no conditions. This has happened many times in the past when the market's gotten really busy. That home buyer's rescission period is actually a tool that people can lean on to make sure that they can still get the important homework done, pending they're allowed to within their contract, so they're not committing to a property without having the proper due diligence done and whatnot. So what happens moving forward from that? Now, your offer is accepted. You're likely not planning on doing a rescission. What happens next? Well, there's some key steps, and really those are just fulfilling those terms and conditions that you had on your offer. So, as an example, you're going to send your deal to your mortgage professional. We talked in days past about what types of mortgage professionals there are out there, but this is the time to actually get the deal over to them. And you might be saying, well, hey, I was pre-approved, like should be a done deal. You might be pre-approved, but they have no idea what property you're buying, and that property is not necessarily approved either, right? So, as an example, they want to make sure that you're paying a fair market value for the property if they're going to be lending you money on it. They want to do their own due diligence on this property to see that if you were to default on your loan, could they resell it for a fair price? Could they resell it at all? So they're going to want to do things like their own homework. They're going to send the deal off to what's called an underwriter so they can check all the file and rubber stamp everything. They're likely going to send an appraiser to the home to make sure that the value that you wrote on it is appropriate. And you're going to wait for what's called a firm financing commitment from that lender. That's really important. You're also during this time going to schedule your home inspection. So you're going to have ideally have a good recommendation from your real estate professional, or you've done your homework and found the best home inspector that you can find for the money that you can afford. And they're going to go in and they're going to learn all about this home and report back to you and give you their opinions on it. And what happens if something comes up in that home inspection that's detrimental? And it does all the time, of course, right? Well, that's your opportunity to really take one of three actions. You can decide to not move forward with the contract, right? You can pull out because if you find something significant or even insignificant with the home, that's really your decision depending on how that clause is structured. The second thing is you can try and renegotiate with the seller. Maybe they're willing to offer a credit to allow you to get some money back to help fix the whatever the problem is, or maybe they're willing to reduce the purchase price of the home, or maybe they're willing to fix it themselves. These are conversations that you'll have to have at that time after your home inspection. And the third option is to just move forward. I mean, maybe the home was such a great deal, or you're so in love with it, you don't care about the problems, and you decide to move forward with it. You're going to also additionally review that property disclosure statement together with your real estate professional, and you're going to want to pay a lot of attention to that. And remember, it's to the best of their knowledge, the best of the seller's knowledge. So you can't always fully rely on what you're seeing in there. You're going to go get your insurance quote. And they're going to ask you questions about the home. There's a lot of information they're going to want to know, and you're going to want to be as accurate as possible giving them this information. Okay, so, and there's also certain issues with homes of certain ages or certain characteristics that you're going to need to understand. Ideally, you've had these conversations in advance, but there could be things like, is the home, does it have asbestos in it? Or does it have aluminum wiring? They want to know what the age of the hot water tank is, and the furnace and the roof. They want to know what, if it's a strata, what the deductibles are for the strata zone insurance, and how much that might cost you if you were to have like an earthquake or a water leak or anything like that. They want to know the proximity of the home to floodplains. Maybe you're in a floodplain. These are all things you need to understand to get that insurance quote properly. You're going to review the title and the title charges as we talked about. And there might be other conditions. There might be other conditions as necessary. There's no such deal as completely cut and dry. Every home is unique. And oftentimes those are kind of our starter conditions, which lead you down a path. But you might see something which causes you to ask more questions or have different concerns. Or maybe you saw that when you originally viewed the home. So you might have other conditions in there that you require just to make sure that you know everything that you need to know about the home. So we've now talked about the documents involved, the conditions that are usually on the offer, and what happens after you remove your conditions. Well, you've bought the home, you've committed to it. If all this due diligence and homework checks out, you remove your conditions, you have bought the home. That's when it gets removed from realtor.ca and the MLS services. That's when your deposit goes down. Your deposit is, good faith money as part of maybe your down payment, but also the total purchase price that will go towards the seller at the end. It doesn't go to the seller, as I mentioned, initially it's kind of held in trust by the real estate company that you're working with. But that is what happens when you remove your conditions. You've decided on your completion and possession dates. Okay, and your completion and possession dates in British Columbia, they do work a little bit different than other areas of North America and in Canada, where your completion date is the date that you actually own the property. This is the day that your insurance would start for, as an example. But oftentimes you don't move in right on your completion date. It's usually a few days after on what we call the possession date. You're asking, well, why is that? Let me give you an example. Imagine you're buying a home off somebody who's also buying a home. So they can't buy the home that they want until they get the money from you for the home that you're buying from them. So I'm going to use a 4-day scenario here where day one, ideally you complete on their property and you've given them some money for their home. Day two, they're going to have the money from you and they're actually going to give that money away to the people of the home that they want to buy. Day three, ideally, they can move into the home that they bought. And then day four, ideally, you can move into the home that you just bought. So you can see that there's a little bit of a calendar of events there typically. It doesn't happen all the time. Properties can be vacant and whatnot. You can maybe get in earlier or whatnot, but that's often how it typically plays out, which is a little bit different. Dates and deposits are a little bit different in British Columbia than many other provinces. So it's really important to understand that. And I wanted to give you a pro tip as well, is when you decide to remove your conditions, if you are renting, you want to see how that's going to line up with you giving appropriate notice to your landlord to vacate your rental. You're going to want to understand the impacts of that, because there is things that happen when you give your landlord notice that you're vacating, and there's certain amounts of notice, typically 30 days, that you have to give. If you're in a fixed term lease, it's a different story. So you're going to want to have those conversations, either with your real estate professional or with your landlord in advance. So the deposit has gone down. You have now committed to the property. This is super exciting. This is awesome, right? So it's time to plan your move. Your real estate professional, ideally, they're going to have lots of contacts that you can get in touch with to help you find movers. This is time where you're likely going to bring a lawyer or a notary into the conversation. You likely don't have one. So maybe your real estate professional is able to help you with that as well. And as part of the downloads in this section, we've also got a copy of our post sale to do list. So all the people that you need to contact and let them know that you're moving. And it's a really long list, but government, doctors, dentists, family members. I mean, it's a really long list. I'm not going to remember it all here, but that is in the today's download where you can get access to that. You're going to eventually fast forward and get from the day of condition removal to the day of completion. So what happens? Well, typically a few days before the actual completion date, you're going to go meet with your lawyer or notary, and they're going to finalize the transaction for you. They're also going to finalize the mortgage for you as well. So your mortgage broker or your bank is going to would have sent all the mortgage documents over to your lawyer, and they're going to actually be representing both you and the bank to put this deal together. They're going to send you what's called a statement of adjustments, and they're going to let you know what the final total is that you owe for everything that's happened, including their services are usually on there. And they're going to explain, or ideally they're going to explain, actually, oftentimes they don't, but oftentimes they throw a big stack of paper at you and say, read it. But they're going to go over the paperwork to finalize the transaction. This is kind of the last step before you own a home. So you're going to go meet with them and get that all done. Once that's happened, completion date comes and goes. The property is registered in the land titles office and it's yours. Exciting, right? So awesome. So again, you don't necessarily get in right away. That's for the possession day and time, but the property's yours, and it's pretty exciting. The day your insurance kicks in and all that sort of stuff. So again, in the download section below, we did do a little bit of an explainer video on property taxes. So that's in today's download as well. You can definitely check that out. But this is when you've got into your home, you guys. This is the final hurrah. This is what's exciting. So I want to leave you from, this entire 5 days of presentations with a couple things to think about. Number one, there is a video available on purchasing a strata, and there's so much to know about purchasing a strata, a townhome or a condominium. You need to know this stuff. So if you haven't had an opportunity to check that out, be sure to see if you can check it out, or just leave a comment below and we will send you a link so you can access that stuff, because it's really, really important. And it's always changing, right? I mean, obviously, when you film a video like this, rules can change, laws can change. It's always changing. And being in BC, things change very, very quickly. So, just always keep on top of that stuff. And, this isn't meant to take away from getting professional advice at the time for your own specific situation, right? So just always kind of remember that. We have got a ton of resources for buyers on our website. So our website is linked below in the description as well. You're even going to see below in the description, oftentimes we're offering things like the 21 grants and rebates that are available to home buyers right now. So you can get that to make sure that you're saving a little bit of money. And if you find yourself where you're at a point where you want to continue learning more, subscribing to our YouTube channel is a great way to do that. But maybe it's time to actually get started. If you've gone through all 5 days of this process, you're probably a little further along in the journey than most people, and you're probably ready to do something, or you're getting very, very close to do something. And that's when you want to consider hiring your real estate professional, something we talked about in days past. The German group would love to be part of that team and love to help you be successful in the purchase of your next home. So you can connect with us in the description below. You're going to see information to book a time to speak with me, and we would love to connect with you about buying your next home and helping you be very, very successful. If you're looking in other areas of British Columbia, we also have affiliate agents agents all throughout British Columbia. So this means that if you need help in Kelowna or you need help in Smithers, BC, or Vancouver Island, wherever that might be, you can still connect with us and we will give you the contact information of one of our trusted real estate partners in those areas to make sure you're getting a very high level of service from somebody that is incredibly qualified to help you. Guys, I want to thank you for joining me on the very final day. You've stuck with me. I really appreciate it. And I wish you tons of success in buying your next home. It's going to be great because you are so well prepared for it now. If you are curious about anything going on with real estate, leave us a question in the description of this video and we will be there to help you. We care about you guys. We appreciate you and we very much look forward to hearing about your success. Take care.